Okay, cameras rolling. Now make life easier. Rules are very simple. You just look at the camera. After I introduce you, I'll turn around and then we just begin talking. Okay. Yeah, and so we just have to raise your voice, a little bit, lower it. So you ready?
Yeah, ready.
Okay. Hi, I'm Robin Stienberg. Sorry.
Take two.
Take two, yeah. Hi, welcome to the National Queen's Choice Online News. I'm Robin Stienberg. Welcome to my show again. And today we have a great guest, a wine owner, and here in Singapore, but he's based in Chile. He's none other than Mr. Chris Milliken. He is the owner of Pengwine, and Chris Milliken began, with his friend from Chile, Max Ezra. And is that right?
Izagirre.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
It's a little tricky.
And they started their company in 2004, and they actually had their first bottle opened up in 2003 vintage, which is a Pengwine. And you know what? They have really taken a lot of trouble in making the best wines in Chile, known as Pengwine brand itself. And as you can see here is Pengwine, and it's a Royale 2010 vintage. Now, Chris, welcome to our show.
Thank you very much.
I mean, it's amazing, how far you guys have come. Setting up the company in 2004, and now today, it's 2012 right now. How is the journey been for you guys?
The journey has been quite complicated, fun, in every step of the way, in every aspect. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of learning. I would say it's also been very challenging. To my original concept, coming as a chef is my background, so working hard was never a problem. But when I thought about making wine, getting into the wine industry, I saw that you work very hard picking grapes, and then the juice sits in barrels, and for a year or so, the wine is just sitting there. So how hard could it be to make wine? Well, let me tell you, making wine may not be so hard. Selling wine and staying competitive in the marketplace, that is a very complex and trying aspect of the business.
Now, Chris, speaking about the business of wine, how did you get your craft or your training to pick up the grapes and making good wine?
I studied winemaking in Australia, working in the Yarra Valley, and later returned to Chile. And my partner Max knew of a great location in which to produce wines that were with vines that were already planted. And we approached this location, which had never produced bottled wine, and brought it to market. And so for us, it was a great opportunity and a good synergy. We had the vision of taking wines and continuing to produce wines the way we would like to mix them, blend them, barrel them. And so ever since then, I would say, even if the vintage itself, maybe the weather wasn't better or than other years, our techniques and what we're learning about how to make wine has definitely improved over the years.
Now, speaking about having a long-term relationship, how do you get to meet your partner Max? Was it by accident in Chile, or was it over a party or some sort?
Max is the first Chilean I met after arriving in Chile.
Really?
And it was through my wife's cousin's college roommate's friend's brother, who had a barbecue. And invited my wife and I to this barbecue, and in fact he himself couldn't make it, but said, please come visit my brother, go to his barbecue, and have a good time. And that was Max. And Max and I have been great friends ever since. And that was back in 1997.
Is there any similar interest that you and Max have, other than just wine? Was it the food, or was it fish, or...?
That was definitely food. Max is a fantastic cook as well, and
really?
So we got into the kitchen, and we had a great time in the kitchen. And the more we cooked, the more we drank, the more we drank, the more we cooked.
Is there any one dish that you can't forget, that you can't live without Max cooking it when you get back to Chile?
If Max was here now, he'd already be laughing as well. Probably anything with a balsamic or soy sauce.
Really?
Mixture on chicken. So
Really?
you'll have to ask him about that one day.
Okay. What kind of soy sauce? Was it a Chinese soy sauce that you guys use, or
It was a Chinese soy sauce.
really? Oh, is it dark or a little light soy sauce?
Light soy sauce.
Light soy sauce. So you fancy light soy sauce here in Singapore?
This was just something that what he had in his kitchen, and you know he's always been he lived in California for many years,
Oh wow.
so he had the experience of working with different types of cuisine, and
Including Chinese cuisine?
a little bit, yep, absolutely. He was more of a wine and cheese guy. He could live off of wine and cheese.
Really?
Make that his diet. But
Wow.
he's the reason I have such a passion for wine.
Oh, why is it so? What do you
It
say?
was that barbecue. It was
The
that
barbecue.
barbecue. And he had a bottle of the Miguel Torres Santa Digna Sauvignon Blanc from 1997.
Oh,
And
was it his own?
No,
Oh.
this was a bottle of wine that he was serving at the barbecue.
And he made it.
And no, that was just he just happened to have it there.
Oh,
But when
okay.
he served that wine, I went, "Wow, this is a great wine." And then he started to share with me his knowledge about wine and showing me some great vintages and things about Chilean wine. I hadn't known Chilean wine. I was only in Chile for.
But is he a winemaker himself?
He and I both own the company, and we design all the wines ourselves.
But does Max has a qualification for making wine?
Neither of us have degrees in making wine.
Oh, okay. So he just loves to make wine.
You know, if you think back to the history of winemaking, wine being made by monks, wine being made traditionally, it's great that there are schools, enology schools, to become an official enologist. Similar to being a chef, I went to chef school. I learned everything that I know outside of chef school, doing it hands-on, and so that was why I wanted to go work at a winery, to learn how to make wine hands-on. And when you walk, every winery has different techniques, a little bit of a different way, a different style, how they approach what kind of final product they want to end up with. And I think that Max and I always felt like we enjoyed the same styles of wine. And so when we're designing our wines and when we're planning our wines, we've been very, very pleased with, because you don't know. It takes 2 to 3 years before you know that what you wanted to make is actually going to turn out to be what it is.
Now, what kind of challenges do you guys face when you first set up your winery? And along the way, are there any additional challenges added to it?
Setting things up, just getting the barrels, making sure your tanks are clean, etc., isn't so much difficulty, but probably knowing which type of barrel goes well with which grapes and which juice that we have. So you have American oak barrels, French oak barrels, Hungarian oak, Russian oak, and then you have different forests within each of these countries that also produce a different style and a different texture to a wine. And then you have, how is the toast of a barrel? Is it medium toast, heavy toast, are the ends toasted, just the insides toasted? And every one of those little details has a lasting impression on the wine.
Really?
That you don't know
Huh.
for years.
Oh,
So
okay.
to think about, well, let's experiment with American oak. And you go buy a couple of American oak barrels, $200 a barrel, but you don't know for 2 or 3 years if you really like and you're super happy with what the American oak did versus maybe the French oak. And then you have, would it work with the Cabernet, but would it work with the Carmenere? Would it work with the Shiraz? Maybe we should put Chardonnay in a barrel. And there are so many small little levers, I guess you could say,
Wow.
that you're always pulling and trying to come up with what's working a little bit better or what's still making that style of wine.
Now, from that experience, what have you drawn so far? And what kind of barrels do you prefer to use right now today for your wines?
Thus far, we've found that French oak has worked incredibly well for us. And medium toast barrels, though we're always experimenting. We're always trying some different oak barrels, trying some American oak, getting a little bit more vanilla aromas, or we've tried some Hungarian oak. And one thing I'm very curious about is Chinese oak.
Really?
So China is starting to really come on strong with their oak production and for the use of oak barrels. So no country in the southern hemisphere can produce oak that's dense enough to make barrels. So it all comes from the northern hemisphere. So the United States, Europe, and working with forests in China, they're finding that the Chinese oak as well is dense enough. But again, it will take years before figuring out if that's going to be the better oak for our style of winemaking.
And now, speaking about oak, how about the corks? What kind of corks do you guys use? And because today there's an argument between a regular cork, plastic cork, Portuguese cork, and now the screw caps.
Correct.
Now, is there any argument or preference in your policy, as well as your partner has preferred or come about, wanting to use which is which, and why?
I love this argument, or debate. It's probably better as a debate. I greatly enjoy it because I am absolutely pro cork, natural cork. My reason for that is I personally think that it is the best enclosure we can use. And my first argument would be, if it's not, then why are the most expensive and best wines in the world still using it? Because if there's something better than cork, and you're going to go out there and spend $1,000 for a bottle of wine, why are they still using cork? So that's my first argument for why cork. Secondly, I have never had a wine that was bottled with a synthetic cork, meaning a plastic cork. To date, I have not had one that's been in the bottle more than 5 years and still been drinkable. Unfortunately, because I invested as well in wines that I didn't realize had the synthetic cork on them. And to date, I have not been able to drink one of them after 5 years and still be able to enjoy it. Now, that's not saying anything negative about screw cap. I do think that screw cap, the Stelvin, has its place in the wine industry. I think that it's very good for wines that are being drunk now, maybe sell it for 1 or 2 years. The convenience factor is absolutely there. One of the challenges in Asia is that the hospitality industry in the developing Asian countries are not familiar with how to use a cork cooler. So there's an additional training procedure that has to take place there. So that can be a little bit complicated versus they know how to twist off a cap. And that's fair. To make a wine, for us, the wines that we make, we only use cork. And we have found we've had very good results with it. And they used to say, oh, but you have cork taint and all these things. I think that the cork industry has done a very good job in addressing the negative aspects of cork, different treatments, etc. to the cork prior to releasing it so that it reduces the potential for any cork taint to take place. And I believe that a fine wine is alive. It's always changing in the bottle. And as the wine is living in that bottle, it still needs the opportunity to expand and evolve. And natural cork allows it to do that. And I do know that they've invented a Stelvin, a screw cap, that is to mimic that process and allow oxygen, a little bit of oxygen to penetrate through, etc. To be honest with you, I can't elaborate much more than that, but or as to how well that's faring in the marketplace, I have not yet tried.
Now, about the terroir in Chile, how do you describe the terroir in Chile and also compared to South America, other South American countries like Brazil and so forth? Do you think that they have a potential to produce very good wine? And what you see in Chile, the terroir is just right. And what do you foresee in the next coming 5 years?
That's a good question. Chile has an amazing terroir, and each region does have its own terroir. And I think with Chile, it's very, very Mediterranean. So you do have the driest desert in the north. It's the driest desert in the world. It hasn't rained for hundreds of years. And then you have Antarctica to the south. So you have every type of dynamic climate that can exist. And then you have microclimates within that as you're dealing with the different valleys, the mountain ranges, and such. And then you have the Andes Mountains, which creates a barrier and has kept any pests from coming into Chile. And this has kept Chile with some original rootstocks that came over from Spain and from France in the 17 and 1800s. They actually can trace grape varieties that came over in the 1500s, and they're original, versus other countries that have had problems and have had to go back to rootstocks from other countries and regraft in order to produce their grapes. So Chile has that benefit working for it. And the soil content, the nutrients within the soils of Chile are amazing. As a chef, when I first moved to Chile, I went there and worked in the restaurant industry. And it was just amazing to go to the market at 5 o'clock in the morning and to see corn this big around, to see celery that long and that big around, and probably even larger than that. The soil is just naturally rich. Kiwis would be bigger than my fist. And it was the US importers of fruit that came down and said, you have to make all this fruit look a lot more like what we're used to bringing in, because we just can't sell it in the US looking all crazy like that. You can't have kiwis this big. But that's naturally how they grow and how things grow there. So, and I think that as far as the classification of terroir within Chile, the Chilean wine industry has done a fantastic job categorizing the different terroir structures within Chile. And you have everybody from Montes, Casino Macul, Concha y Toro. They saw years ago how important it was to document and isolate the different terroirs and regions, and how to start focusing on the different grape varieties per region. And with over the next few years, now that they know this is where Pinot grows best, this is where Chardonnay grows best, Merlots, etc., Rieslings from the south, I think that's really going to set the stage for an amazing next 5 years in Chilean wines.
Now, are there more wineries being opened up or established in Chile right now as we speak?
Not as at the accelerating pace that you had, for example, in the 1980s and 90s of Australia, especially the 1990s in Oregon and Washington State in the U.S., where there are over 500 registered wineries in the state of Washington alone, where I believe there are only 300 registered wineries in the entire country of Chile. And it's still a third world country coming up very, very quickly, and I agree with the government when they say in the next couple of years they will be the first Latin American country to come out of that stigmatism of being a third world. So I think that there will be some more wineries, there will be some more winemakers. Many winemakers from France, from Germany are intrigued about the potential of Chile, so they are looking at prospects in that area as well. But also, for the most part, you do have your big players. Business is business. And so a lot of the larger players are very protective, and rightfully so, of what they've created.
Now, do you have to deal with corruption in Chile? Do you have problems with that for businesses?
Not in Chile. Not to say I don't deal with that in other countries, but in Chile, though it's classified as third world, that doesn't mean I would not apply the stigmatism of corruption to Chile. I think that doing business is very straightforward. It's documented very clearly. The tax system, the import, the export is very well documented. And of all the countries that I've done business in, from that aspect, it's the most refreshing to know that the policies are in place and they're adhered to, and I think that's very important.
Now, speaking about the importance of doing business, Pengwine itself, why do you name your winery Pengwine?
Coming to Asia, I get that asked a lot. It sounds so Asian. Why is it called Peng? My partner and I always believe in having a good time and being in the kitchen, drinking wine, and hanging out with friends, and that's when you're having a great time with wine. And so we wanted to come up with a name for our wine that was somewhat lighthearted, but also told people what the product is. And many people don't know that 14 of the 17 penguins in the world do live along the coast of Chile and Antarctica. And so for us, it seemed like a nice fit and a way to educate people, have an educational point about Chile, in that penguins live in South America and live in Chile, and you also think cold. That penguins only live in the cold. Well, in fact, penguins migrate all the way up to the northern parts of Chile, and they don't like the cold so much. That's just where they naturally go for breeding purposes, for the most part.
And how many kinds of species did you name your wines after penguin?
So far, we have 8, but there's a little bit of a catch with that.
Okay, what kind of catch is that?
There's one penguin that is South American, but it's not Chilean. You wouldn't be able to categorize it as Chilean, more Ecuadorian. We have a red wine and a white wine that we usually sell together, and it's the Gala and the Pagos. When we put them together, you get Galapagos. And Galapagos is a little bit of a harder sell, harder to say, that sort of thing, in many markets. So the Gala and the Pagos, when you put them together, and interestingly enough, it is a penguin that mates for life. So a nice harmony.
That's very nice. Now, do you have any trademarks or copyright issues when you actually name your company Pengwine, or even especially when you name your wines after your penguins? Did you encounter that?
It's a bit of a double-edged sword in answering that. Initially, we have had some issues with some other wine companies. We were never able to get them to specifically say they had a problem with our wine or the penguins, but they came at us with, we don't like this, we don't like that, we don't like many things about your brand, you need to change it. Without in my opinion, and with our legal team's opinion, an adequate reason to stand behind it. So for us, we did make some changes in order to abide to the larger guys and kind of make our peace. But we kept our name strong, and the idea of Pengwine, wine should be conversational. Wine should be something you can remember and talk about. The number of times people come up to me, "Oh, you make wine. I had this wine last night." And that's about the end of the conversation. Because they can't remember what the name of the wine was they had. Now, maybe it was they had such a good time. But at the same time, if you have a wine out there that you want people to be able to talk about it and have a good time, and I think Pengwine, we have a lot of good talking points and a lot of good reasons to just share the moment.
Now, speaking about sharing the moments, let's move to sustainable and CSR. About your wines, of course, I mean, they make me of glass and so forth, and also sustainability. How sustainable is this business going to be for a long term? Because wine business is a challenge, as you said earlier, and selling the wine is another issue as well, because you are up against other wineries around the world as well.
Sure.
And coming to CSR, how does your winery give back to the society? Do you guys recycle your bottles of wine whatsoever, or is there any form of assistance to the Chilean people?
Sure. On many angles, I would say we're always giving. I believe that the only way you can receive is to give. First off, that's a philosophy of mine, both in work and in my private life as well. And for us, being recognized in the environment is important. We use recycled glass. It's called Eco Glass. It's just as strong, a little bit more lightweight, reduces our carbon impact. We help a charity called Voluntarios de la Esperanza, which is an organization linking orphanages within Chile. And we were one of the very first companies to assist with their building, and they're doing so well. They're really doing a great job of growing, and they bring in volunteers from around the world to assist them. When we first started working with them, an individual donated a container of disposable diapers.
And how much is that?
That's a lot of diapers. It's
got
got to be
one container? Are you talking about 40-footer or 20-foot?
like a 20-foot container.
20 foot. Oh, okay. That's a lot of diapers.
It's a lot of diapers. But you have a lot of orphanages, and what a generous thing. Well, they had never used disposable diapers before. So I one day went to an orphanage and like, we're so glad you're here. Can you explain to us, how do we get these to dry? And I went out, and in the backyard they had the clotheslines, and all these disposable diapers that they had washed out still hanging in the clothesline, and they don't dry. That's the whole point of disposable diapers. So explaining to them that you don't reuse disposable diapers, you throw them away. So that was in the education piece that had to go with that. And then you have the disposal of disposable diapers. A country that doesn't quite have the infrastructure built. The diapers came before the infrastructure was built to handle disposable diapers. Things like that. And I was one of those people who felt like I could give my time. And to be absolutely honest, I walked in, and within the first 10 minutes, I could barely speak. I had tears coming out of my eyes. They handed me a baby. I have 2 daughters. I thought this would be pretty easy. As I'm rocking the baby back and forth, I say, "What's the baby's name?" She doesn't have a name. And at that moment, I realized I'm not cut out for that type of work. And so I will donate my time in different ways to help get funding for organizations that can do that. And in each country where we sell our product, we look for a company or an organization that we can align ourselves with to give back to that community. In Singapore, we do sell our products here. We are not aligned with any Singaporean-focused organization at this moment. But within Singapore, we work with many other organizations that have outreach throughout Asia. And I would say on average once a month we are helping to sponsor benefits, etc., to raise money for hospitals in Cambodia, orphanages in Laos, different things like that. We have an orphanage in Bali.
And do you have any plans for Pengwine to form a foundation in the near future?
In the near future? First, I need to continue to make sure that I'm building the business strong enough to maintain that sort of a foundation. It would be a great dream to be able to do that. But right now, I still have a little bit more of the business to grow, to make sure that it's strong enough to run on its own and create such a foundation.
Now, about your wines right now, what kind of vintages this year in 2012 and 2013 and 14 are you going to foresee, and do you have any tasting notes on that?
As I mentioned earlier, I think with the vintages, regardless of vintage, we're making better wines year after year.
Okay.
I feel that we're knowing how to work with the juice that we have, the grapes that we have, the barrels that work better, etc. So that makes for us better wines. Global warming is always of a concern, though. We've been over the past few years, very successful and very fortunate to have good growing, long growing seasons, dry growing conditions. So far we haven't had any rains that have destroyed our crops or late frost, etc. And
how about pests? Do you have any challenge with pests?
We really don't. I mean, we're
really?
very, very fortunate that everything's really minimal from a negative standpoint of. And I would say that across the board, generally speaking about Chile. So one thing about Chile is you can get consistently good wines, vintage after vintage, because it's such a great growing region for growing grapes.
How many workers do you have working on your winery? I mean, is it like an army of workers or something?
It is not. In fact, it's quite small. Most of the year, the wines are just sitting there in the tank, or in the barrel, or in the bottle. We do have a full-time winemaker. His name is Hector Olivares, and he's called Tito. And Tito's always overseeing everything that's going on there, and Max is guiding what we want to make and how we want to make it, and Tito's ensuring everything's taken care of. Aside from that, he's got a couple cellar hands that help him in the cellar. When it comes picking time, this becomes the hardest time. It's time to pick the grapes. And
It can't be done by one guy, right?
can't be done by one guy. You need an army of people, and you pay them in cash as they're picking the grapes that come up with the local village, and they come up and they drop their bucket of grapes in the bin, and they're paid right there on the spot.
Really? Every time they pick, they drop the grapes and then they get paid.
They get paid instantly.
Wow.
So they go home with money. But here is the catch. We're not the only vineyard in the area, nor are we the only crop producer in the area. And sometimes you have blueberries coming into season at the same time that the grapes are ripening, or
Wow.
kiwi, and somebody's over there telling the villagers, we're going to pay you a little bit more today. Just make sure you come. And now we've got fruit sitting on the vine. We're like, what do we do? And so it's always
The
a
challenge.
delicate balance of keeping the villagers and everybody else happy as
Wow.
well. And so the
Is it just for the summer?
for during the harvest, yes.
Okay. And when is the harvest happens in Chile?
It can happen as early as March, but usually April and May are our busiest months
Only for 2 months?
for the most part.
And the
Sometimes the Carmenere grape will go out into June.
Okay. And so the rest of the year, you just leave the harvest untapped.
You've got some pruning to do in the vineyard and a little bit of vineyard maintenance, etc. But it's picking the grapes, crushing the grapes, making the juice, creating your must. All that can take place within 3 months.
Oh wow. And
And after that,
so how many tons of grapes do you usually collect them every year?
it can range because they've been planting more and more vines, trying different things. And it takes 5 years for a vine to produce fruit worthy of making a good wine.
So, but what's the average amount of tons? Do you know?
I can't even give you the average number of tons. It can really, really vary. Because sometimes
How about this year? How about this year?
I can't even answer that question for this year.
Oh wow.
Because to be honest with you, all the numbers aren't it. Because you have your
must be a
tons
lot of
grapes.
wine.
Oh, it's a lot of juice. It's a lot of juice. The other thing is that we have buyers of some of the grapes. So there are people who come up and they just buy the grapes. So they're produced. And sometimes it's advantageous to say, well, you can have the grapes, but you're going to have to send some pickers. Especially on the day that the Kiwi guys are paying a little bit more.
Oh wow. Do you guys always have to fight for manpower every year?
It's also changed because, more people in the valley have been planting more. So there's not more people moving into the valley, but there's more crops being planted. So therefore you have
Wow.
the balance is being thrown out of
So how are you going to encounter the human resource problem in the near future?
There's a possibility of that some of the other wineries near us are setting themselves up for more machine harvesting.
Uh-huh.
So when other producers, not just of grapes but of other items as well, when more producers start using more machines, that should in fact also free up manpower. But at the same time, families are growing, villages are growing, slowly but surely. But then you also have, globally, less farmers.
So are you going to make that investment with you and your partner to purchase machinery to encounter the human resource shortages?
At this point, we have not made any plans.
But you will do so in the future.
If the problem, I don't know if it's the way we've made our wines, all of our high-end wines, they need to be selectively picked. And when you have a machine harvester, you start to lose a little bit of that control. Now, there are many people who say we have the best machine harvester, and that's great. But the way a machine harvester works, it's not selective. It just goes through it, smacks the vines and whatever fruit, whatever falls into the bin, goes into the crusher. So you lose that control. Depending on the wines that you make, depending on the style,